Okay, I believe that's been shared everywhere it needs to be. Hello, this is not MicroStream. I've created another diversion for myself to not have to invent a new thing to do under the microscope for an hour every week. I just released an update to SHADOWBOX yesterday, and so I'm going to use that as an excuse to go over SHADOWBOX stuff instead and stream from the game to show you guys what's been changed in beta 1.05. If you direct your attention over to the top right corner, you can see that's where we're keeping track of the version history. So if you've taken any footage of this game already, which I'm very excited to say some people have already streamed beta 1.0, but you'll be able to tell which version you're looking at. And so if there are any, hopefully mostly positive changes after this update, you'll be able to keep track of which version you were playing, and that'll be helpful for me when working on this stuff. So to do a formal introduction, hello, my name is Benjamin Muller. I'm a paleontologist, and I'm not a software developer. So you're looking at a free virtual museum that I've been working on over the past 13 months with the help of a few friends. And this is a free piece of software that you can download right now from Steam. I'm just remembering, as I always do, a little bit too late, that I should post a link to the Steam page in the YouTube chat. And I also need to apologize, as always, for having a bad microphone, bad streaming etiquette. This is not what I do professionally. I am aware that my probably 10-year-old blue snowball microphone does not sound great. I am aware that, you know, all this stuff. This isn't what I do professionally. So just bear with me here. Okay, Steam page is in the chat, so you can go and download the game right now at that link, completely free of charge. Again, I am not a professional software developer or a streamer, which is why I don't charge for this particular thing. You will notice that around here are QR codes, such as on this page, that go to some of the writing I've been doing on Patreon for quite a long time, 2.5 years now. All of those pages should be unlocked, and you should be able to read them free of charge. So if you're going around and playing and you notice any QR codes that go to a page that isn't publicly available, that you need a subscription for, you can go ahead and let me know, and I'll make sure that that's unlocked, because it is not my intention to make people have to sign up for my Patreon to be able to read the actual explanation, you know, the scientific sort of digest of what these different things are. As always, I do have to say thank you to people who are subscribed to that and are giving a small monthly donation. They're the reason that the software exists at all, that I felt justified in putting time in to do something experimental like this. Again, this is the first piece of software I've ever tried developing. I got started with Unreal Engine 5 in November of 2023, and this was just officially released on January 1st, Eastern Standard Time. So if you look at the Steam page for the game, it says release December 31st, 2024. I don't care. You can have whichever release date is canon in your head I'm comfortable with. So I'm going to go over what's changed in this version versus 1.0, because I've now streamed. I've played a little bit of 1.0. I also streamed an earlier, technically pre-beta version back in September, which did not have, for example, the inspection mechanic that you can see right here to get up much closer with the fossils and move them around. And I'm also aware, again, this is an early beta, so actually controlling these different things is a little bit wonky. And yeah, you can zoom in and see that not all of the models are going to be picture perfect. But I still think, to be quite honest, I'm still blown away by the quality of the models that you can make using photogrammetry these days. So that's one of the first kind of points that I want to make. I'm just going to generically address kind of stuff that people streaming this game have said, stuff that people in reviews have said, just because I don't want to single anybody out. And so one of the kind of questions that was asked is, or implication was that this right here is something that was 3D modeled, and that is not the case. This is a photogrammetric scan, which is to say a model built with photographs. So I took hundreds of photographs of a real object, a cave bear skull that does have some restored portions. So if you look at, I don't know if red is the right word, it's more of a brown, kind of maroon, on the top of the skull there, on the frontals, kind of around where the eye orbit would be. I'm aware that there isn't a laser pointer in the game yet, so when I say stuff like that, it's not super specific. Yeah, so there are portions of it that are restored, but the majority of it is a real fossil. And yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that, like, I am not in any way a talented modeler. Nothing you'll see in here is something that I've, like, manufactured. You know, it looks like a real object because it is a scan of a real fossil. And one of the disclaimers over here basically says exactly that the scans and so forth, and the photos that you'll see in some, unless I'm mistaken or unless I've neglected to note, although I'm pretty sure I've got everything noted, all represent original fossil, or otherwise a replica that is like one-to-one to the point that I can't distinguish it visually, and I would have to physically pick it up in order to be able to tell the difference between a replica and the original. But those would all be, you know, I'm pretty sure I have noted anywhere that that is the case. I'll also point out that there is absolutely nothing in here that can be described as artificial intelligence. No artificially generated content, I should say. So I'm not using ChatGPT to help write the script on this. Again, I'm not a coder, but I have a real person who is real people, multiple, who help with the coding. Braden Brandis, if you go into the credits, you can see, you can say thank you to the people who actually worked on the aspects of this that I could not, including Braden, who made the menu that I would have probably taken a month to figure out how to code. Again, my contribution to this is like, you know, the architecture, the designing of all this stuff. So anywhere you're looking where you're like, that looks kind of amateurish, it's because it is. But I know a lot about fossils, and I have access to a lot of real and incredible fossil material, public collections, and a few privileged private collections that have allowed me to scan. And so what this is for is giving the backdoor like look at real fossils, as opposed to the kind of stuff that you tend to see in, you know, a given like community museum. A lot of what's on display, not all of it, but a lot of it is going to be replica, and that's simply for safety, safety of the actual object, and the real fossils are kept in collections in back rooms. But what I wanted to be able to show in this, which I'm very happy people are responding positively to, are the real things. They can be a little bit more difficult to interpret because replicas will have, you know, a little bit portions restored that aren't actually there, so they can be easy to tell visually what they are. But I think it's just really informative to be able to put a real fossil in front of someone. For example, this lungfish tooth right here that's about 100 million years old, came from North Africa. That's an object that, you know, I'm sure some museums have stuff like this on display, but as a random crapshoot, just to be able to go and see what a real one of these looks like, a physical space, you know, a real museum is one place you could go, although they often have replicas on display instead. You could go to Google Images, but those are so much less reliable now than they have ever been. It's really distressing to me when I try to go searching on the internet for pictures of fossils, and all I can find are obvious fakes. So, you know, this whole, and I have talked at length about what SHADOWBOX is and what the ambition is here, so I don't need to go over all of that again. This is just supposed to be updating on what's different from the original release versus this update. Most of them are performance, and a couple of them are bug fixes. So if you were having issues launching this beforehand, I would encourage you to download the update and see how it runs in comparison. We know, by the way, that there is a difference in frame rate between the inspection area as well as the kind of free movement. So we already know that there's frame rate issues to address in both areas, but that these are kind of separate. One of the things that was changed were the creation of additional level of detail models, LODs, so that hopefully there is no noticeable difference in quality when you move closer or further away from these objects. But if you really inspect closely, if you've got a 4K monitor, I'm not streaming this in 4K, but I work on it in 4K, and I'm looking at it in 4K right now. If you zoom further away, as is how video games work, the quality of the model is going to decrease because you don't need to be looking at it in high enough detail, and it's a way to save performance. And so I created additional LOD models so that there are now in the game some very low quality models that it will switch to if you're very far away. And I'm happy to report that I can't tell the difference when you get further or closer away. You can kind of see around the edges on occasion when you're switching from one of the high triangle models to one of the low triangle models. But for the most part, it's pretty seamless, and I'm satisfied with that. And it seems to be, from the feedback I've already gotten, that as well as the changes that we've made to global illumination seem to be making a difference. So that's really cool. One of the reasons, again, that, in a proper quote-unquote video game where you're using basically all intentionally modeled stuff, the shadows and all different sorts of complex details have to be rendered according to the quality of the model, and so shadows from a high triangle to low triangle model will definitely it'll be more noticeable because there's changes in how shadows are rendered, but because this is a model based off of a photograph, and while taking the photograph there is a natural shadow on the object, a lot of the shadowing here is actually an illusion, and it's kind of baked into the texture itself. So I think that's why I'm able to get away with having pretty significant differences in model quality, and even to my eye, on a 4K monitor, I cannot tell the difference. Rita commented, I did notice that the reflection seemed to disappear when you look down at the floor. Was that intentional? So that is kind of how shadows work in Unreal Engine, at least how it seems to. So if you're looking at it right now, you'll see that looking down, the shadows kind of disappear if I'm in the same spot. That is just how this seems to work in Unreal Engine. That's not something intentional on our end. It's probably certainly a setting somewhere in the engine, but that's not something we've intentionally changed between Beta 1.0 and then this one. Everything in here is pretty much the same. I will point out that I have marked right now specialty galleries are going to be coming soon. So the specialty galleries are going to include kind of stories that I want to tell that don't have, that might include multiple geological formations or might not necessarily have to do with a specific deposit. So for example, the first specialty gallery that I'm going to be working on, I can't say exactly when it'll be ready. Depends on what other stuff kind of gets thrown my way here this month. My schedule's been very variable in this last week for sure. So the first gallery that I want to set up is an examination of real and fake fossils. Real fossils and fake fossils as I've kind of indicated, for me, it's easiest to tell them apart based off of weight is one of the things that you can do. A real fossil is going to be much heavier than a replica, basically regardless of whatever material you're actually using. Whereas, the real thing is going to be a lot heavier. When you can only use them, when you can only use your vision to differentiate them, such as when you're working on, when you're in a museum like this, or a digital setting where you can't physically touch the object, as much as this model looks like the real thing that I can actually hold in my hand, this is not a physical object. And I do not believe there's an examine on this. Certain fossils which are being used as kind of environmental props do not currently have an inspection thing tied to them. So for example, you can inspect this tooth, but not this tooth right now. I am open to feedback on whether, that should change or be kept the same. Specialty galleries, first one that I'm going to put together, shows real and fake fossils so that you can really see kind of in cross-section. A real fossil has some very difficult to replicate internal structure. The marrow and the vessels and all those things that run through the bone is conserved during fossilization in most cases. So, a big dinosaur fossil broken in half will look like, an elephant bone broken in half on the inside to a certain extent, right? And so I've got some scans that I've already taken of real fossil in cross section, so you can see the internal structure, and then I have some fake fossils that do not have that same thing, and I want to put them next to each other so that you can kind of see visually. Yeah, so I'll show you an example of where I don't have the inspection turned on, and there is a very good reason for that. So, like in this exhibit, we're going to move to the Turney Ranch. We've got this big dinosaur foot. And I'll also note that, by the way, this is not the final assemblage of what this foot is supposed to look like. I have models of all of the different foot pieces. We have a label that says partially reconstructed right front sauropod foot. Obviously, in discovering this stuff, it's difficult to tell from fragmentary material exactly what everything is. These are elements from the right feet, but it's kind of a composite, most likely. And also, there are certain missing elements, like right there, I've got a floating piece of this particular toe bone, and then this is the corresponding piece, but nothing kind of bridging them. So I'm still working on how I want to model missing pieces, as well as it just needs to be noted that there's a possibility that these are from two different right feet. So there's a lot of kind of more in-depth stuff to show here. But the reason there is not any, the reason there's not any inspection for it right now is because I don't have a singular model of this whole thing. And so if I were to try creating inspections for each individual bone, they would overlap significantly, and it would be really hard to tell them apart. So when this foot is kind of in its final state that I want it in, and by the way, there are additional bones in the front and back right legs that can be added to this as well. So as I said, this is going to be worked on. If you are a sauropod foot expert and you're looking at this right now thinking it could use some work, I'm aware it will definitely be touched up. Right now, because this isn't a final model, you would just be looking at the individual pieces. If you want to examine one individual piece, this is one of the foot bones. See it right there, and I've got the specimen number. I didn't have any questions about this. I don't think. But you can see in some of these models that they have a written label on it, 500:282, which corresponds to its collection number at the repository where this fossil is kept. And I don't love it that most places will put a little bit of whiteout on the texture of the bone and then physically write it on. I don't love that, but having seen the ways that collections can become really mixed up, I understand why people do it. I understand why it happens. and it's not something that I desire to like remove, you know, because that is what's actually there, and you know, yeah, I think the labels, aesthetically, they stress me out on the real thing, because you never know. It just hurts to ever obscure some aspect of the real fossil. But this is what the actual objects look like. The real thing that is sitting in a drawer right now, safe in its little hiding spot, that is what it looks like. I think I should also most likely, obviously, all of these exhibits have one particular thing that you could critique on, which is that they're not necessarily to scale. So this whole foot is proportionally not to scale to this tail that I've reconstructed. And this tail, if you couldn't tell, is one vertebra, this one, that's been replicated a number of times. So, you know, the real thing would have a little bit more variation. But for the sake of creating something that you can run on, at least to start, and you will notice that there's occasionally, if you're trying to jump on the stuff, you may shoot directly through the ceiling. That's also a known issue. Yeah, like I can jump through the ceiling from up here. So that's pretty cool. From spending quite a bit of time volunteering in a traditional brick and mortar museum, I know that many museum attendees greatly desire to climb all over the exhibits, and yeah, you can see another label, 500-286. And again, disclaimer, these are almost certainly not assembled correctly. Do not take that as my official, you know, official restoration, official final restoration. And yeah, there needs to be more illustrations in basically every single exhibit. For example, to emphasize what Sonorosaurus actually looks like, as opposed to the Turney Ranch Carnosaur, which this is kind of a representative of. That's actually my Carcharodontosaurus skull illustration. And the Turney Ranch Carnosaur would have looked possibly more like Acrocanthosaurus. It's been kind of attributed to Acrocanthosaurus, as I note in this image over here. So when I have an illustration of an Acrocanthosaurus skull, I'll replace that. I'll also bring up, that was obviously a piece of feedback for this whole thing, is that additional art assets are definitely needed, and the point was made that there's just a lot of copyrighted material out there, and I think that's a really important piece to make, that in YouTube you can find, and across the internet, you can find a number of amazing illustrations and reconstructions of all different kinds of extinct animals, and those are works by artists, those are copyrighted, and you actually need permission to use those. It kind of irritates me that a lot of like paleontology YouTube does not spend the time to get permission to use art assets. Usually they're pretty good about at least attributing, but to do this kind of work, you know, to a higher degree of scrutiny, like you need permission to utilize someone's art assets, even in a free project like this. And so that's why I've gone, even though there's a lot still yet to be done, I'm making the point to create all original material. And on stuff that I can't do, I will be working to commission specifically for this project artists to create assets for this stuff. So yeah, you can find illustrations. You can go on your phone and look up, you know, stuff that isn't listed here yet. And the reason it's not here yet is because there's just quite a bit more work to do. There will be a lot more text implemented. I have gotten some feedback on the QR codes yet. I'm sure that they don't necessarily work on every device, on every monitor that you're looking at the stuff on. So I'm sure kind of improvements to that can be made. There will be more text on the actual exhibits as well. But the reason that I use a website is that it's a lot easier to update, right? If I come across an error in one of these exhibits, right, I've accidentally labeled a fossil incorrectly, or I have a short summary of a thing and I notice that there's a typo. In order to push an update out on Steam, I have to be at home and able to access my home computer where I work on this stuff. You need to re-render. You have to include whatever time it takes to address the problem, plus about, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes to re-render and then re-export the software, and then there's also an uploading process on Steam's end. I can push out an update in about 2 hours at the drop of a hat if I really needed to. And that's being a little bit generous. I could probably do it faster. But if we're talking about a small typo, I would really love to be able to just fix that quickly. And so, that allows me to correct large volumes of text a lot more quickly. And yeah, part of what should be amended to it, as Rita's pointing out, is that using an extra device, if you don't necessarily want to do that to read it, can be annoying. And that's just a matter of implementing an extra layer of interactivity here that allows something within the game to be able to pull up a web browser. If you've used not Jackbox, I always get these backwards. If you have used Tabletop Simulator, you can bring up a browser within the game. So think something like that. And of course, Steam has a Steam overlay. So there's ways to work on that, and that's all, it's all at some point going to be, included. This is an example of something that, because it has a bunch of pieces in it, does not have an exam yet because it's not in kind of its final assemblage. But so far, I really appreciate the amount of just the amount of appreciation for how much time it's taken to even make it look this nice. It was 14 months of very regular work on learning all of these aspects of Unreal Engine. As you would imagine, scanning each of these things, which I had to do myself. You can find 3D models of much bigger fossils, you could say subjectively much cooler fossils out there, but I wanted, again, to be using my original work here. This is partly a portfolio of what I'm able to do, and not necessarily just like, here's all the free assets that I can find, which should be an exciting thing just to put out there, because it means that, your favorite local museum, which I'm sure has 3D models of its fossils, I would hope, because many of those institutions have had 3D scanners for a very long time. It means that there's a big opportunity, I think, for institutions to utilize the same kind of tech. And part of the reason why I wanted to put so much time and effort into this was to make the point that it can be done, and also because I always plan on making this free, to make sure that the bar for what museums and other institutions would be able to charge for would be pretty high. Because I believe in making this stuff as freely available as possible. This is, our common natural heritage, so it's not something that I feel particularly comfortable putting, like, paywalls in front of anyway, even though, as a paleontologist, that is what I do for a living. And I do need to be able to, live in order to continue working on this stuff. It's just one of those things, So I just ran through the Zuni exhibit really quick. The Zuni Basin stuff is kind of kind of a nickname for the Moreno Hill formation material. Yeah, this very basic modeling here of kind of what the environment around where these 3D trees were, that's going to be improved as well. That is definitely not final either. And as is noted in here, I'm actively working on research projects to describe more of this material that'll allow me to put that stuff here. And again, another component of creating this was to create a platform that I can actually, advertise my research in and just make it as easy as I possibly can to get that in front of people. At the end, I'm going to go over the regions, kind of the stats on just this first, and not even 2 weeks of SHADOWBOX being out, and seeing where different people have come from. The Geological Eras Tour is the most performance-heavy exhibit by far. Again, I'm hoping that there will be more improvements made to that over time, so that it doesn't take quite as long as load and runs a little bit better. And when I've kind of figured that out, it will be much more densely populated with different information. We've got this lovely music disc with some friends that music that I recorded with some friends here in December of 2023. Very fond memory. So yeah, there's a lot kind of going on in here with the different periods, and then the tracking in the corner that actually measures out at a consistent scale how far back each of these things go. And that's an idea that's extremely exciting to me. There is a bug where a lot of these are only shaded from one side, so that's something that I'm aware of as well. By the way, Rita comments, maybe you could have a separate donation system that is specifically for this project. I'm working on that. What I'm considering doing is allowing, so the Patreon store allows you to do one-time sales, and I'm thinking of doing kind of a one-time sale where you can, a one-time sale good where you can buy a marked gravestone that I'll put together like a graveyard of donors, and if you want to have your name on a headstone of people that have helped contribute to this project, that's what you would get. So if that sounds appealing, let me know, because I'm invested in continuing to work on this stuff. I'm not going to go all the way back there, but there is a hidden abomination at the very end of this tunnel, so if you have not made it to the very end, consider checking that out. Hey Ben, are you going to make more bone abominations? Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to that. Like, this is an overwhelmingly educational, like, way too much information all at once. But that doesn't mean that I can't have fun and put something kind of silly in there too. And yeah, more of these kind of interpretive signages. There's definitely a better way to integrate that than just having the pictures up. But for at least some of these, I wanted people to be able to actually see what these pieces are, because the inspection would not necessarily work. This is a flat photograph, I don't think it would be too much work, considering, the gravestones can be duplicated pretty easily, and it would be a matter of just putting text on it anyway. So it's basically just type out some text, duplicate one object, and that should be pretty much all I need to do. There will be more kind of bones assembled in and along this line, bones and other fossils. I've got a couple of exhibits marked out for 2025, so the Green River Formation, which will have not huge, the Green River exhibits that you'll see in different museums have massive, beautifully complete turtles and fish and crocodiles and stuff like that. And I have photographs of some of that sort of material, and I'm hopeful to include scans of it someday. But this first exhibit will include mostly fragments that I helped collect That would have been around 2010 or so. I was at a quarry where Green River material comes out of, and as you know, there's just something in me psychologically that believes, like, oh, I'm saving a fossil. I guess it's true in a literal sense, right? That a lot of fossils are completely discarded if they're from a place like this, where a very complete material comes from. A lot of broken and fragmentary stuff just gets left behind. And so while I could have spent time meticulously splitting all this limestone, I actually went out and picked up all the fragmentary shattered material that would have just been crushed and buried in the next 24 hours anyway. So what you're looking at right there is a fragment of kind of the spine and part of the stomach of a fish. And the material is generally not complete enough that I feel comfortable describing them, picking which species. I've still got a little bit of work to do to see which species I can determine, but there's already some scans of this material already. So that's one that I know will be ready for 2025. So again, something that I think is valuable, especially if you want to be able to be working in fossils and paleontology in the future, is that you need to get as much face-to-face time with real fossils as you can to see how they really appear. And while this might not be the most mind-blowing, blow your pants off, like, incredibly complete fossil, this is what a real fossil looks like. And even so, it's got a ton of tiny little fish bones perfectly articulated in life position. It's got fragments of the skin on it. If you look close enough, it's got all the little ribs in place. So there is still something, at least to me, really fascinating and beautiful about even fragmentary fossils, So the Green River will be having its initial opening this year. There will be better material added into it over time, but that first opening will be in 2025. The Chinle, by the way, Chinle exhibit, there is kind of the same way, lots of incredible material that will be added to it at some point. What's in it right now are mostly pieces that I've collected from literally a landfill, a place where this stuff would have just been thrown away had someone not come and collected it with permission from the landowner, of course. That's a little bit of extra context to some of these pieces here. Yeah, even with these new visual settings, you can still kind of see the openings, the pores on this skull piece. So I'm really happy in general with the texture quality and on all these different images that I've been creating. You can actually read the text, you can actually see the image. Really happy with all that stuff has gone. There will also be another exhibit opening in 2025 in the Triassic, the Moenkopi. Again, this might not be the next update. It will probably be at least a few months before any of the new exhibits open. But we've got at least one in the Eocene, one in the Triassic, and then I believe I have, two in the Cretaceous for at least this year. That's what I'll commit to. And depending on how busy I get, I may be able to add a lot more. I'll also point out that, as it notes in certain places, paleogeographic maps are going to be coming. One of the most fascinating aspects of paleontology is having to really think about where in time and space these fossils come from, and that involves trying to conceive a planet that is both still Earth, but in such different continental configurations that it seems alien. And so having maps to actually show that, I think, is really crucial. But that also takes a ton of time and research to be able to... What I'm going to have to do is actually sit down for probably about a week, at least, to actually draw out and properly source research for drawing out a series of maps of the Earth across time for at least 600 million years or so, because that's how far the Geological Eras Tour goes back. And that's another one of those cases where I don't know people who create paleo content on YouTube and in other places. See, there I am launching into the sky again. So we'll work on that so it doesn't necessarily do that. I don't know, people use paleogeographic maps very willy-nilly without, I think, looking under the hood and understanding that a lot of what you're looking at is up to interpretation. And so, in kind of the way that, like, paper towns, the concept of a paper town is a geographical feature that only exists on paper that gets put into maps by map makers to prove that someone else is just straight copying their work. And in the same way, paleogeographic maps in areas of ambiguity will have certain structures that if you just directly copy, will make it pretty obvious that you are just tracing somebody else's work. So in order to create not just good enough maps, high enough resolution so that I can take up a big old space up here, because that's ideally the resolution I want, I'm also going to need to go under the hood and actually look at the existing research and work directly from there, as opposed to doing too much unintentional replication of somebody else's interpretation. This room is going to have some extra art assets as well to help kind of show the scale of the size of these different ichnotaxa, the different footprint species. So again, there's art assets that I'm going to be making because I need to be researching that. There's other stuff that, because I'm just bad at drawing, I'm going to commission other people to do. And so if you're interested in that, the email address to contact is in the game, but it's also written out in the game, but you can also go to, it's ptpaleo, PTPALEO, at proton.me is the email that you should send to if you are interested in being commissioned for small assets. Again, this is something that I do mostly on my own dime. There was a question that one of the streamers early on asked, which is like, I'm sure he's got some kind of grant to work on this. This is not funded by any grant currently. This is just the generous, gracious donations from my patrons and the spare money that I've got to throw at it. And that includes the tools that were used to make it. That includes my time. I don't even want to speculate how many hundreds of hours I have taken to even get this far, partly because I don't want to admit how many hundreds of hours goes into a fairly basic little room like this. There is a terrestrial side to this exhibit. I'm not sure if I can bug through so you can actually see the part that's already built. There is so much more to unlock in each of these exhibits, so I just hope that that's both clear and exciting for people to see that, if you like the way that it looks so far, this is like not even close to how ideally I'd like the room to look. There's still so many more fossils to include. There's still so many more things I can scan, so many more interactive things that I can do in a digital space like this. And because the game performance has hopefully been improved, I've gotten feedback from 2 people so far since it came out yesterday that say the performance is included, has been improved. So hopefully more people can have fun, not just exploring, but also trying to break the game to see, what you can do. Oh, I keep screwing this up. You can, in fact, jump up the composita. Let's see. And jump through the roof. Come on. Okay. And through the roof. There you go. Cool. So yeah, have fun. Have fun with stuff like that. And I think that's most of what I wanted to address. There's just so much more that's going to be included in all of these exhibits. What's been fixed right now are some performance issues, which hopefully should be getting the stuff running a lot better so people can really go in depth and explore what's already here. There's so much to improve as far as the inspection, the QR codes, text in the exhibits, maps and art assets. as well as giving people a way to directly donate if they would like. You know, if small monthly donations are not your thing, or you don't want to be getting notified about new articles, and you just want to do a one-time stuff, or if you want to gift kind of a one-time contribution, I'm working on a way to do that. I'm also juggling like graduate school applications, and I've already put in the application, but there's, you know, people I need to talk to, meetings to have, and so forth. I was also fascinated to learn that not everyone knows Tiktaalik is a real thing. So this animal does not come from the Martin Formation. I should probably just be very clear and note that somewhere. This is an animal that lived in the shallows during the Devonian, so in this type of habitat. We don't have fossils of anything like Tiktaalik so far from this area, but it's very possible that something like this could be. And I also just wanted an excuse to show off Tiktaalik because it's one of my favorite things. I'm really happy that I've got a cool specimen photo of it. And I did not know that not everyone was aware that Tiktaalik was a real thing. You know, this is the meme fish, and this is what it actually looks like. A lobe-finned fish, very close to the ancestors of tetrapods, including you. We can't prove that we descend directly from Tiktaalik. Tetrapods may have come from a relative. It likely looked quite similar to whatever we came from. Those are all the legalistic scientific caveats behind just saying, like, that's the fish that crawled out of the sea that led to us, and also taxes, and why your life under decaying capitalism is terrible. You can't put all that on Tiktaalik's tiny shoulders. Look at them. They're barely even there. It's like part of the thing. We have a comment. I haven't been able to visit the museum yet. It looks great. Thank you. Will you add a second floor to any of the exhibits that can be seen from the ground floor? Yeah, probably. Again, everything that is in the like physical construction around here is pretty rudimentary, and kept rather simple until I could get like the performance really figured out. So now that I've had almost 100 people, I guess, since we're getting close to an hour, I can go into the play stats that I'm really excited about. But close to 100 people have launched the game so far, and that's given a lot of really useful feedback on how it actually runs. And especially with this past update, it should hopefully be at the point that I can make the physical like layout of each of these exhibits a lot more complex, that allow stuff to be taller and wider and more intricate. Because this is a big wide open room. There's lots of empty space that I can put more stuff on, you know. I'm gonna alt-tab out for a second. Same with Sonorosaurus. I will point out that Zuniceratops has a lot more material than what you're looking at right there. I have a lot more material that's scanned. And so I'm just going to be continually adding to these things, adjusting the scaling and the kind of the way that each of these bones articulate to make them as accurate as I can. And as with the Sonorosaurus, replicating known elements to fill in stuff that isn't there is both common for the replicas that you'll see in museums, as well as what you're looking at right there. This is all one bone that's been copied several times to make up for the incomplete tail. And you can also see the label on there, right there on the top, P3210. Okay. And here's where another map is going to go, eventually. So let me pull up. I've got a lot of information about how many people have claimed a license. So far, the number of people who have added this game to their library, and by people I mean Steam accounts, so that also inevitably includes bots and things like that. So the number of accounts that have claimed a free license of SHADOWBOX, that would be 7,360 accounts, which is amazing. That's a ton. The number of people who have actually launched the game, so downloaded and played it so far, number of unique users is 94. And you might think, wow, hey, that's a tiny fraction of the number of people who have claimed it. And that's true, but that's also not unusual when it comes to digital media and stuff like this. It's a pretty famous stereotype that even with like purchased video games, people will buy them and then never play them. And so for something that's free, where someone might be like, okay, I want to claim that in case it disappears someday, and then not get around to playing it anytime soon, is totally expected. It's my super unprofessional drink of water. I am not a streamer. Let's look at... Oh, it says currently 1 player. That would be me. It is cool how you get to see all those sorts of details as well. Now, what I really want to bring up, I'm really excited to see how far and wide people who are playing this game have come from. In my stream last week, I kind of brought up let me pull it up again. Yeah, on MicroStream last week, I gave shoutouts to where downloaders are coming from, and I'd like to do that again. And I'm going to note which countries have been added since I last talked about this last week. So this isn't a full, complete list of all the countries where people have downloaded this stuff from. And by the way, there's no way, I think, to account for people using VPNs. Oh, interesting. I'm on the ceiling now. Oh, that's so awesome. See, this is why I need people to be playing this, is, you know, don't just have fun learning. I need you to try to break this thing, like, as hard as you possibly can. Exhibits in real-life museums are built to withstand physical assault, and I want to have mine live up to those same expectations. So I'm not even sure I know how I did what I just did. I will go back and look at the stream. Okay, so this is not fully complete. This list may be affected by VPNs and stuff like that, but this is the list of places I have people downloading this stuff. First of all, at the top of the list, not surprising, 33 from the United States. The second place goes to 9 downloads from the Russian Federation. That's really cool. So almost 1 in 10 current SHADOWBOX players in the first just under 2 weeks of release are from Russia, which is really interesting. Again, all this stuff is in English. I really want to be able to provide language support for different languages. But for the time being, this is all going to have to be in English. At the very least, like the exhibit text and stuff like that. And certainly I don't have the ability to commission translations of scientific material into hundreds of languages, as much as I would love to do that. So the fact that 1 in 10 players as of now does not come from an English-speaking country is really cool to me, and also makes it very clear that I really do want to add whatever support I can to make this accessible to people around the world. Because in addition to those places, we have 5 downloaders from Germany, 5 from the UK, 5 from Indonesia, 3 from Brazil, 2 from Australia, 2 from Canada, and 2 from France. And in addition to that, I've got a long list of places where at least 1 person has downloaded so far. So shoutouts also to India, Iraq, Taiwan, Romania, Colombia, Ukraine, Vietnam, Austria, the Philippines, China, Serbia, Poland, Turkey, South Korea, Sweden, the Czech Republic. I believe that should be written as Czechia. I don't know. Steam might be a little bit outdated on that. Belgium and Malaysia. So we've got people from literally around the world who have, at the very least, launched the game before. And who knows where all those thousands of different people who have claimed it so far but not yet played come from. So I'm really excited. Every time I wake up, I refresh this thing to see which new countries may have appeared. So since last time I talked about this, I don't think Belgium or Malaysia were there. I don't think Sweden was there. I think China is new. I think Romania is new. I did not have... I don't think I had any Indonesian players last week, and now there are 5 people who have downloaded it. So that's one of those cool things where I wonder, like, is it just a coincidence, or is it like one person tried it and then convinced 4 of their friends who also live kind of around them to try it. So that's all really cool. Like it is really, really, really awesome to see that, you know, I've put in a lot of work into this, but also it's like there's still so much more to go. And even with this very early stage that I've decided to share because I wanted to get feedback as early as I could before I start putting stuff like the way that these different buildings are constructed, you know, into like solid concrete. Like this is something I want it to stay as, you know. So I wanted feedback pretty early. But even in this really early set, already there are people all over the world who are playing this. And for example, going into like this exhibit, the Coconino Sandstone, and looking at scans of fossils that are not just from my home state, so people all over the world are learning more about the fossils of Arizona, but this is also a piece that I collected when I was a little kid. You know, I remember finding this on the ground and picking it up and then carefully wrapping it up, you know, to bring home and store. And I'm glad that I have a way to at least make a copy of it so that people all over the world can see it. And also, I always forget if I actually have told this story or whether I intend to and forget. But right there in the middle is a footprint, a much larger footprint than the other 4 that I did not notice until I had actually scanned it. On the real piece, those 5 indentations, I'm going to put a laser in this eventually so you can see what I'm pointing at, but those different indentations right there that show a much larger footprint are not super obvious on the actual piece, but looking at it under this artificial lighting makes it pop way more, and then I went back and looked at the real thing and I could see it. So yeah, that's an example. Several of these exhibits are composed of, at this point, entirely fossils that I've collected myself. The Naco Formation is like that. The Martin right now is like that. The Chinle, hopefully soon, will have number of fossils. The pictures don't count. I'm talking about the scan stuff. Hopefully will include numerous fossils of things that I have not collected, because the stuff that I have is quite small and humble compared to what I know is out there. But for now, this is all material that I helped rescue, quote unquote, that now people all over the world are looking at, and that's just really, really, really cool. The Atarki Sandstone and the Cliff House Sandstone are going to be that same way, all stuff that I've picked up so far. The Moreno Hill Formation, as well as the Turney Ranch and the Menifee, all include stuff that's been scanned from public collections, stuff that was picked up, in some cases, decades before I was born, or about 1 decade before I was born, and put into a public collection so that researchers like me can come in years later and access the same material. So again, anywhere that you go in SHADOWBOX where you can find, like this guy, a fossil, something that has a little label on it, right? That means it's in a public collection. That means that it is part of our common natural historical heritage, and that it has a physical home in a physical place. I mean, just like all of these things, but if you are a researcher who does stuff in paleontology, and for example, you want to learn more about sauropods in the early Cretaceous from Arizona, here's a piece, you know, that would have been otherwise pretty difficult to try to track down a 3D model of something like this. So I like to think that I'm being useful, and I think this project has a lot of uses. I'm really happy with the way that things are going forward. I'm really appreciative to my programmer who just walked in the door. Again, very professional streaming setup. You know, for making all the parts of this that would have taken me a very long time to research just happen. We have another question right before we wrap up. Do you have a searchability? Are you thinking of adding it? Yeah, when the exhibits get bigger and bigger and there's more and more material, someone who just joins is going to want to be able to just find the dinosaurs right away, or people want to just find, I want to see the Arizona stuff, I want to see the Chinese stuff. So I'm going to have to contemplate ways to allow you to kind of search for a specific place that you want to go. The way that the articles are arranged on my Patreon have lots of different search tags and stuff like that. So on the app that you can use, think of it like a companion app that has all the written out information on this stuff. It does. In the actual game, I need to work on that. Yeah, ways to search for, like if you have a name of an animal, or if you're like, I want to look at something from a particular place, we will work on that. So that's kind of all I have to share for now. If there's any last minute questions or comments or things like that, again, I really want to say thanks to everyone who has downloaded it so far, everyone who's played it so far. It hasn't even been 2 weeks yet. And I've worked really, really hard on this, and I'm excited that this is the worst it's going to look, that it's only going to go up from here. And I'm excited to kind of use this as a way to, get me working on publishing more material. As far as my scientific publications go, I'm very excited now to get to the next round of publications so that I can just take my own work, my own figures and other types of assets, the scans that I've made for my peer-reviewed scientific research, and plug that right into here, so that again, someone living hundreds or thousands of miles away can look intimately closely at the same fossil that I've been looking at for months or even years. So that's all really cool. Again, thanks for everyone who supports on Patreon. If you want to help push this stuff forward, help me out. Help me do all the stuff that I do for this, including making videos in the field, including just getting to the field. That is the way that I have right now to support me. Otherwise, share the Steam page, share videos of that stuff. All of that really helps me. One last question, a bit off topic. What's the significance of the star and skull? Why did you decide on the star being the SHADOWBOX icon? So it's, if you look at these on the floor, this is a photograph that I took of a Moroccan dinar. Or is it a dinar? No, it's a Moroccan franc. And I've kind of, it's not the same, so it's the logo on there is kind of a hand-drawn star. But it's something of a tribute to kind of one of the, and this is not necessarily a widely known thing, but one of the places in the world that has some of the most, just the most numerous fossils, the most incredible fossils, is this little Mediterranean country on the coast of northern Africa. So in some ways it's kind of an aping of that, kind of a reference to it. But it is kind of my own illustration, and the skull is just an asset that I had that I looked nice. Yeah, it does kind of evoke Wiccan vibes, and I am certainly not displeased with that. Why did I pick it? Because I think it looks cool. That is the most honest and accurate and concise way to put it. So, yeah, that's what I've got for now. Thanks everyone who's looking at it. Thanks everyone who's listening now and going to listen in later. Thanks for your guys' comments. And the feedback and suggestion is all very helpful. You know, the whole reason that I'm not just streaming this software, but I'm making it available to go and play for as many people as we can. Right now it's just on Windows, but we'll be adding support to other platforms hopefully soon. Is not because I want to keep this to myself. I want other people to spend time becoming intimately aware with the story of life on Earth, because that's something that we all hold in common. And if I don't stop myself from rambling and waxing philosophical, I will do it forever. So that's the stream. Thanks for coming, and I will see you guys